wonderful show for today, really. And our highlight question of the week isn't really a question. It's really more comments at the beginning, because this was recorded shortly after the Pope's passing.
Easter season joy and grace, folks, as we continue to pray, as we'll chat for the repose of the soul of our Holy Father, Pope Francis, and for the cardinals who gather in conclave.
And, Bishop, the chair of Peter is vacant at the moment. They smashed the papal ring.
Mm-hmm.
We've seen some amazing events that many of us have not seen. And, of course, you're right on top of everything, right?
Well, one of the things we heard recently, Ron, and I think our folks would resonate with us, is the striking reality for those who have been to Mass in these days since the Holy Father's passing away, is that, of course, we don't hear the name of the Pope in the Eucharistic prayer. And, of course, we pray for the Pope, and thank God for the bishop at every Mass. But isn't it striking? It really, Ron, is it's a stark reminder, if you will, that the see of Peter, that is, the Petrine office, is vacant at this moment because there is no name spoken or prayed for. So it is a rather somber reminder that we are in this interim period without our successor of Peter and Vicar for Christ.
But yeah, it's like something's missing when you hear that at Mass.
Absolutely right.
Notice it.
And I've done several interviews, Ron, since the Pope's death, and talking about in a particular way the reality that the Pope, in essence, for us as Catholics, he's the father of our family of faith universally, right? So while he has many titles, he really is a father to all of us. And so we mourn his loss as we would our own personal fathers, our own family fathers. The only difference, of course, is then we also rejoice because for us as humans, we don't get to have another father, right? Natural father. But as members of the church, we do receive a brand new father once a new pope is elected. So it's an extraordinary counterpoint, and I've used in a number of interviews. I had the privilege and the grace of being in Rome when Pope John Paul died, and at his funeral I wept uncontrollably physically, and then I was in the square as Pope Benedict came out onto the balcony, having been elected the new pope, and I wept bodily of joy because of his election. So these are powerful emotions which many of us will feel and encounter. And of course, Ron, we celebrated the Pope's funeral last Saturday. The funeral was celebrated in Rome. That Thursday before, we celebrated a Mass for the repose of his soul in our cathedral, a diocesan-wide Mass praying for the repose of his soul. And Ron, there's just a few maybe personal notes that I could mention. It's really quite something that the cardinal who celebrated the Pope's funeral, Cardinal Giovanni Battista Re, is the dean of the College of Cardinals, and in fact, he was my boss for 4 years in the then Congregation for Bishops. So I worked very closely with him in the congregation where I worked at the Vatican, and to see him at 91 years old, he's in better shape than I am, folks. It's incredible. But what a beautiful connection for me, that knowing him personally, and, having worked with him personally for 4 years, here he is, the cardinal who celebrated the funeral for the Pope, and also a diocesan connection because our Vicar General, Monsignor Kubacki, had, like two other priests in the diocese, Monsignor Billion and Father Andrew Wellman, they took pilgrims because they were going for the canonization of Carlo Acutis, which, as you can understand, since the Pope has died, that can't happen, so that's postponed. But Monsignor Kubacki was in Rome, isn't it something, for the election of Pope Francis, and was in Rome now in these last days for his funeral. Now, whether or not they'll all be in Rome for the election of a new pope, that depends on how long the conclave will last. So it may be that we will have our own representatives from the diocese, even in the square when a new pope is elected. Rather extraordinary connections.
Sure is. And as they say, stay tuned, right?
Absolutely.